Hello and welcome to episode 100, Spycraft 101, the making of an intelligence officer and recruiting assets. So, this is a continuation of episode 99. So, I kindly request the guest to first listen to episode 99 so that you can very well connect with our episode in this 100th episode, basically, to connect with the dots that we are going to discuss of the continuation from episode 99. Yeah, James, back to the pavilion again on this episode, and yeah, clocking 100 episodes, so that's a great thing. You are one of our, I would say, associate who is setting a benchmark with us on the 100th episode. Yeah, without any delay, I would like to just deep down to the topic directly. We covered what kind of assets that are recruited, the kind of skill set that are necessary. So now I'd like to basically take a little bit step ahead and dive into the kind of challenges and the opportunity side of the recruitment process. So what are the ethical challenges intelligence officers face when recruiting assets, especially in hostile or I would say high risk environments, and what kind of risk do intelligence officers take when trying to turn a target into an asset?
That's an excellent question, Omkar. As I mentioned in episode 99, our highest goal, our highest priority is always the security of the assets whom we recruit. That is a sacred obligation. We will go to hell and back to rescue an asset. If I give you my security commitment, I'm not saying that I guarantee you 100% that you won't get in trouble, but I'll guarantee you that we will devote 100% of our attention and all of our power and everything that we have to get you out of trouble if you get into trouble. And that includes if you do it to yourself. Sometimes some of our assets do some incredibly stupid things. Incredibly stupid. And yet we will go to hell and back to get them out of trouble, because they're now on our team. They become our team member. Uh,
Yes.
One particular case I recalled, it was after a huge compromise had occurred and it exposed a lot of our assets in a certain country. And so we had an asset that we suspected might be under some scrutiny by his counterintelligence service, his security service. So we suggested that he come to a third country, a foreign country, where we could protect him and keep him out of trouble. And he agreed to do that. And so I was the handling officer to basically hold his hand, babysit him while he was in this third country. And he came, and so he tells me at the first meeting or second meeting that he had met some girl at a cocktail bar and some woman from his country, no less, and he had bragged to her that he was a CIA asset just
Oh
so
my
he could,
god.
oh my God, is right. And just so he could, basically romance her and impress her. And I just about, I don't know, I almost had a heart attack. And I said, "You did what?" I was so angry. Here we were spending a lot of money and effort to protect this guy, and it's like he's taking a gun and putting it to his head by telling her
Yes.
this, barmaid from his country that he's a CIA covert asset. And so I rarely lose my temper like that, but I said, "You did what?" I was just going like this. And the guy literally, he was so emotional, he started crying. and,
Oh god.
and I said, "Okay, here's what we're going to do." I said, "You're going to go back and talk to her tonight, and you're going to apologize and tell her that you lied to her about that just so you could get her into bed." He said, "Okay."
Yeah.
So he did that. And then the next time we met a few days later, he said, that worked. And he said, she didn't believe it anyways. And he said, she enjoyed my candor so much we went to bed again.
Oh god.
But I mean, sometimes just keeping an asset
Yes.
out of trouble, or if they've let's say they've taken some of their money that we gave them and they spend it inappropriately on, say, a fancy sports car or something way past their standard of living, and they maybe have jealous neighbors who think, "Where are you getting the money for that?" And they do some incredibly stupid things, but we will try and get them out of trouble. So our top commitment is always to the security of our assets. Now, you asked me about how about recruiting people in hostile countries or war zones or things like that. Well, for one thing, we have to be very careful in certain countries, as you can imagine what those countries are. And we typically would not try and recruit that person in their home country where their local security service controls all of the various aspects of an intelligence
Yes.
operation, a lot of surveillance and things like that. So we try and get them outside of their home country to a safer environment to talk to them and to meet them as well. Now, we do issue what we call clandestine communication systems to some of our assets who are operating inside countries that are extremely hostile to Americans. And so we will put them on a secure communication system so that they can communicate with us securely and not be met in person. But we have case officers who are trained to work in these hostile environments. In fact, we have a tradecraft course, especially for people working in environments of very harsh counterintelligence scrutiny. And
Interesting.
no, it's a real talent that these people have. Frankly, some of our best people that work in those environments are women, and the reason is women have a natural sense of danger on a street. Think about it. You think about how women, since the time they were adolescents, have always had been able to perceive on the street, am I under threat? Whereas men
Yeah.
men are don't really worry about that. So women have a much finer sense of a threat on a street. They can sense it. What's wrong with this street? What's wrong with this or that? And so they become
Yes.
extremely good at what we call impersonal communications,
Yeah.
running surveillance detection routes, and also, honestly, a lot of times foreign intelligence services are so chauvinistic they don't think that the women are the case officers. So they will ignore a woman who looks to be very innocent, and she's out there though meeting some of our assets and doing a brilliant intelligence work. Also, women have a fine sense of intuition, sometimes much greater than men, and a fine sense of empathy. And they can tell if something is wrong with one of our assets, that maybe this guy or gal is under a lot of pressure
Yes.
and we need to take some, certain measures to ensure their security. Or, God forbid, maybe that asset has been turned and is now a double agent. And frequently, a woman can tell that this guy is basically cheating on us. It's just like a romantic relationship. Again, you can tell when
Yeah.
the spouse or the boyfriend or girlfriend is cheating on you. And women have
Yes.
a fine sense of that a lot of times. A lot of times, it's finer than a man. They can
Absolutely.
tell that. So we use a variety of people to do this. Um, in fact, I know two case officers who are paraplegics, meaning they use a wheelchair. And one of these guys, I so admired him. He was a technical officer, meaning he worked in our technical branch. And one day he came to me and he shut my office door and he said, Jim, how can I become an ops officer? I will work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to do that. And so I encouraged him, and by God, he did it. And his his mantra was, he says, they're never going to follow the cripple guy. And, because he basically disarmed them. And he was absolutely brilliant operations officer. And
Interesting.
yeah, he compensated for his lack of mobility by being very, very creative and very smart.
Interesting. Yep. I mean, this kind of cases that happen, and I'm coming to the kind of same point actually, on the communications, and I would say a little bit on the control side of the recruiting assets. So, can you discuss also how, modern technology such as social media and digital communications is influencing the intelligence recruitment today? I'm asking this question especially because, there was an open call by CI for recruiting the people in Russia recently, which happened, I think, few months ago.
Right.
And I mean, I have always seen that, CI has been one of the open agencies which have always kept its public presence as well. Uh, you know, telling what kind of things are going on. I don't think so, and there is any other agency who is that much public, in terms of sharing the knowledge and all. So when I received that update through their social media, I think that was kind of jaw dropping moment. So how does this work basically in this day and age where we have social media? I mean, anyone, I mean, the level of secrecy is reduced when it's out in the open source at the moment.
Okay, so social media has certainly changed the ball game, as it were. I mean, social media really didn't become big until about 10 or 15 years ago. In fact, when I came back from overseas in 1994, most people didn't own computers. It was only in the next few years that people in the late 90s, early 2000s, that people started getting, computers and cell phones, and social media developed. I can't remember, but I think it was back around 2005, 2006, something like that, where you started having social media.
Yeah, I think
Now,
there was Orkut platform was there, I think, back then. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So there's both a plus and a minus to social media. Now, the plus is one you've just mentioned, Omkar. It allows us to communicate with people who are dissatisfied with their government or who would like to communicate something sensitive to us. So, CIA has what we call the virtual write-in program. And a walk-in, a write-in is somebody who wants to volunteer information to us, and we offer them a platform with encryption to where they can communicate with us securely and tell us something that we need to know. Now, a large percentage of this comes from people who may be well intentioned, but who are, let's say, have a few screws loose in their head. But we do
Mhm.
get a certain percentage of legitimate offers of intelligence through social media. And this was developed actually a long time ago. In fact, it was right after 9/11 when some very brilliant technical officers came up with this concept of the virtual write in program. And a lot of people in my directorate of operations were very skeptical about this. But after 9/11, we had a lot of volunteers that offered legitimate, hard hitting, sensitive intelligence. And it takes a lot of people to sort through all of this to see what's valuable and what is, in fact, just BS, or what is maybe deliberate deception by an adversary. Nevertheless, we have gotten some real jewels out of this, of people volunteering. Now, you brought up the recent offer to discontented or disaffected Russians. You've got to believe there are a lot of Russian intelligence officers who are very concerned about what they're doing in Ukraine, what Putin is doing with the country, and so we are giving
Yeah.
these people an opportunity to communicate with us and volunteer their services to us. I think it's great. Now, technology as a whole, and which is a bigger question that you put, it has changed a lot of things. Today, we have what we call ubiquitous technical surveillance, or UTS, ubiquitous technical surveillance. That means cameras everywhere, cameras,
Yes.
biometrics. Um, you know, think of all the cameras in the town that you're in, or all the cameras in certain capitals, and including a lot of third world countries that have cameras everywhere. Then there's the biometrics. I recall I was traveling through a country overseas in alias, because we travel sometimes under alias and in a false name, a false background. And they had a fingerprint reader, before you board the aircraft. And I thought, if I go through that and register my fingerprint, I'm never going to be able to come to this country again unless I'm in that alias. Well, I was
Yeah.
lucky because they were exempting Americans from doing it. But that's another constraint. Then social media itself. Let's say I construct a false persona, an alias. I have to have some kind of social media to back that up. Otherwise, it's going to look very weird if I don't have a LinkedIn profile, or if I don't have a Facebook profile, and if
Yes.
99% of the people that look like me and talk like me have that, I'm going to have a phony LinkedIn profile, something that looks good and it appears to be legitimate. So it is a challenge. Now, is it impossible? No. And I used to I believe firmly in the thing that basically wicked problems also present wicked opportunities. And in
Yes.
the case of the CIA, uh, a lot of times the best counterintelligence approach is what we call swiftness, being very quick. You get in, you get out before people even realize you've been there, and can then put two and two together that this cover company you've got looks pretty phony or your background just doesn't stand up. But you have to be conscious of where you're using that. You might not want to use it in a against a Russian or a Chinese target that has a very sophisticated counterintelligence service, but maybe a more, I don't know, I hate to put it this way, but maybe a third world country where it's not quite as sophisticated or they don't have quite the capability or they're not really looking for people like me. I don't know, but you have to, not scare yourself into basically into not doing anything. At that point, you're
Interesting.
defeated.
Yeah. Interesting. And I mean, like, you have already mentioned some of the, I would say, recruitment examples. I think two of them you mentioned, both on the one of the success side and one where, the asset actually, kind of created a small mess as well. So this question is from that side. What does an intelligence of how does an basically intelligence officer maintain control and communication with recruited assets, especially in hostile or unstable regions, especially if there is, like Syrian civil war is going on, or there are, cases like Iraq or Afghanistan. So if you are recruiting an asset over there, where this region is absolutely unstable, unfortunately I don't believe anything other than the satellite communication, because I work in military satellite communication. So I know, there's a big telecommunication market which the satellite companies provide services. So I don't think other than satellite there is a way to communicate either through broadband satellite or maybe through satellite phones. I just know those two mediums, but beyond that, how do you maintain the contact with the assets and control them, basically keeping
It's
under the toes?
Yeah, it's very difficult in those situations. I mean, you have to figure out
Yeah.
some kind of secure communications method, or you basically encourage that person to come outside of that war zone or outside of that country to meet
Yeah.
in a third country somewhere. I mean, that's not only for their safety, but it's also for your safety. Because there are some services that would kill a CIA officer if they could. Now, most of the major services we have, I guess I could say, a gentleman's agreement that we don't kill each other. I mean, I'm not looking to kill SVR or FSB officers, nor are they looking to kill me. But there are other countries that would not observe that same gentleman's agreement. Or there may be a
Absolutely.
terrorist group. A terrorist group has, in fact, they would love to kill a CIA officer or kidnap one. And so you have to be very attuned to, is this a trap? You may have people armed counter surveillance to make sure that you're safe and you're meeting with this asset. Operating in a war zone is very difficult and very dangerous. We've lost several officers, and since 9/11, quite a few officers who've been, killed in these very risky situations. And we try and take every precaution we can, but sometimes things happen and are outside of your control. But we don't want to lose our assets. We don't want to lose our officers. And so we will err on the side of caution. If we think that one of our covert assets is under scrutiny, we will urge them. We can't force them, but we will urge them to to leave and become exfiltrated. We'll exfiltrate them outside of that country
Yes.
to a safe harbor. We want these people to live, but it's a challenge. I like to say that the letters CIA, it does not stand for Central Insurance Agency. We do take risks. We take
Yeah.
risks, but we don't
Absolutely.
take. We try not to take stupid risks. We try
Yeah.
and basically put all of the odds in our favor, as much of the odds as we can. And so to take whatever precautions we can to ensure the safety of our officers and also of our assets. But you're right, it's difficult, and you can imagine somebody in some hostile country where we don't have a representation, at least not an official representation. It makes it
Absolutely.
very, very difficult. Um, and in fact, you put your finger on it, Amkar. Communication is the weak part of any kind of intelligence operation.
Absolutely.
If you don't have communications, you don't have an operation, and if you do have
Yes.
communication, that could be the thing that is the needle that broke the camel's back. So
Yes.
it's your point of most vulnerability is your communications method.
Interesting. I agree. It's a game changer in some ways. You know, I mean, it works both ways.
Oh,
For an
absolutely.
opposition. Yeah.
Everything that's difficult for us is just as difficult for the Chinese or the
Chinese. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Iranians or the Russians. In fact, I'd
Yes.
say we typically frequently have an advantage in that we have some of the best technology in the world. So
Yes.
that helps us out. But it is a challenge for both us and our opponents.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I agree on this point. And coming to the, we are reaching the final part of the podcast, and this question is basically, I mean, I know you have already mentioned the recruitment of the assets example, but can you also give, kind of more impactful example from that side? So, what are some real world examples where the recruitment of a key asset significantly impacted the outcome of an intelligence mission, especially where you were involved, or maybe your associates were involved, and it kind of basically changed the game of the intelligence in that way?
I can give you a couple of examples. I'll give you one, and if we have time, I'll give you a second one. But I was on my
Yeah.
first tour overseas, and I received a message from CIA headquarters saying that the United States was going to embark upon a very high stakes set of negotiations a year from then that would really affect national security. And so they described the type of person for an asset we should be looking for from this particular country and how we should, devote our developmental operations, meaning meet this person, spot them, assess them, develop them, and then finally pitch them to commit espionage. And so I happened to be fortunate enough to have met a person who met this criteria exactly. So I increased the tempo of our meetings and we became very friendly. And finally, I thought I can pitch this person and get them to commit espionage. Now, usually when you do that, as I mentioned earlier in this program or in episode
Yeah.
99, you're looking for stresses, for vulnerabilities of people. Well, I was a first tour case officer and very naive, and I thought that I could just recruit this person based on the force of my personality, which is a very naive
Yeah.
understanding of the process. But I convinced headquarters that to let me try it. And they were so desperate, they said, go ahead. And so I pitched this guy to commit espionage. Basically, if he could share the negotiating positions with me from his side, and how I would be more than happy to offer him a consulting fee as part of the teamwork that we would be working on for successful negotiations. And he looked at me and he said, Jim, you and I are friends, but what you're proposing, that's morally wrong. Now I have pitched 50 or 60 people in my life, and he's the only one who ever posed a moral objection.
Yes.
Most people, they'll tell you how, well, they'll hang me if I get caught. It's basically fear. They will,
Yes.
and they're right. I mean, the fear factor enters into it. So we have a saying at CIA that it's okay to get turned down, but not to get turned in. Meaning, what if he complains to his ambassador that Mr. Jim Lawler from the American Embassy just proposed that he become a traitor and a spy, and that there would be a big diplomatic explosion because this
Yes.
guy, I didn't mention it earlier, but this guy was the number two man in his embassy. He was the deputy chief
Yes.
of mission, meaning that I was trying to, basically seduce the deputy chief of mission of this foreign country. And his ambassador was a real belligerent loudmouth who was known for going off, exploding. And I could just, in my mind, imagine him exploding in our ambassador's office, all about me. And there'd probably be a good chance I'd get sent home, with embarrassed, even though I had CIA headquarters approval to do this, because CIA headquarters would be in the process of probably distancing themselves from whatever they told me to do. So after about 2 or 3 days of sweating over the possibility that this could go really badly, I finally worked up the courage to call this guy and ask him if I said, we had a great time last Friday. How about we go out again and have another dinner this coming Friday? And my only goal was to smooth any rough waters that or bad blood I might have created. And, maybe I could come up with an excuse that my words were taken out of context or I'd misread the situation. And I just wanted to offer my profuse apologies. I'm going through all these excuses. And I said, how about if we go out again? And he said, Jim, I was thinking the same thing. So I go to this second meeting, the second dinner a week later, with the only goal of making sure that he and I are still friends and that he hasn't basically, turned me in. I was stunned when the first words out of his mouth at dinner that night, Jim, that offer you made me last Friday, is that still good? And I said, yeah, right. He said, well,
Yeah.
what you don't know is 2 days after that our dinner, my wife announced that she wants a divorce, and I can't afford to pay her the alimony to which she's entitled or put my boys
Wow.
in private schools. In my country, you have to go to a private school if you want a good education. I can't do that unless I accept your offer. Well, one thing you learn in law school is if the judge rules in your favor, shut up and get out of court. And so I said, fine. And the
Yes.
next meeting, he brought me a lot of classified material, in fact, about 5 or 6 inches worth. And he said, what you don't
Wow.
know is that I hate my ambassador. That son of a bitch, he steals credit for everything I do and everything everybody else in our embassy does. And when I'm handing you this classified material, it's as if I'm kicking that son of a bitch in the face. And I said, well, you and I are on the same team, buddy. Bring me some more and let's kick him together. And he he basically it goes to one of the purest motivations for espionage is revenge. It's that most people, unless they're totally narcissistic or psychopathic, they won't commit espionage unless they feel that they've been betrayed first. And then they transfer their allegiance to you. And he worked for us for a number of years. And what he did on those negotiations is he gave us not only all of their negotiating positions, but also all of their fallback positions. Meaning, how would you like to know the bottom dollar that you could offer someone for a house that you wanted to buy before they would walk away from the table? And
Wow.
that's what he gave us. And that was estimated to have saved the United States tens of billions of dollars for this particular national security negotiation. So that's
Yes.
one place where one of my recruitments was an impact. The only other one I would
That's interesting.
quickly mention is that my team became aware of the AQCon nuclear weapons network. We penetrated that network, and I personally recruited people who were members of that network, and we brought it down and we disarmed Libya, which was acquiring that nuclear weapons
Okay.
technology. So, the nuclear weapon that they were acquiring was equivalent to a 14 kiloton weapon, the same that little boy was at Hiroshima when it killed 140,000 people. So I
Oh my
find that to
God.
be very satisfying that our small team, the one that I led, was able to disarm, basically destroy the AQ Khan network. AQ Khan was forced to confess on Pakistani television that he had betrayed all of Pakistan's nuclear secrets, and that we were able to disarm Libya based on the intelligence that my team
Interesting.
obtained. So I mean, what's that worth? I mean, a few years later, Gaddafi was overthrown in 2011, and an analyst said, Jim, just think if you and your team had not disarmed Libya, he would have used those weapons on his own people. And I thought, you're probably right. He was a madman. So I find that all very gratifying and very psychologically righteous. I know I use that term, but what could be finer than preventing a madman from gaining control of nuclear weapons?
Absolutely. That's an interesting stories you mentioned. But yeah, in a fun manner, I would like to say the divorce element has been quite common. The second last story that you mentioned. Yeah.
Mm.
for the kind of recruitment that you had done. So yeah, I would say this was a great conversation, very great insights, and I believe this will be a benchmark episode, especially for the student researchers, scholars who listen to my podcast. Always keep on asking me that you have always done episodes on intelligence, how the code operations are carried out, even some real time insights into the kind of the Osama bin Laden's operation were done. I had some of the former CIA officers for that as well, but there was never an episode which told what it takes to become an intelligence officer, what it takes to basically take those kind of risk and become the kind of odd man out in the crowd, where you can lead a group of people in such an intelligent manner. So I would say thank you very much, James, for providing such great insights, and I hope the audience enjoys this as well. And I hope in future we might record some more episodes, because I believe the psychological aspect is something that can be dissected to a deeper level, not only in terms of intelligence recruitment, but also for the civilian side. We can also speak about the way people perceive the intelligence agencies, the way the public opinions and the perception is shaped at the moment. As I mentioned, like CIA, I believe it's one of the agencies which is very much open to kind of share its historical information, basically. So how does it shape the public perspective? Of course, we cannot cover everything in these two episodes, but I believe in the future, definitely I'm happy to record few more episodes with you in the near future.
It was a pleasure for me too. I'm Carr, and if anybody's interested in my books, they're available on Amazon.com. The first book is Living Lies. It's a novel about the Iranian nuclear weapons program, and the second one is entitled In the Twinkling of an Eye. And I'm about to finish my third spy novel, which is called The Traitor's Tale. And those are all available on Amazon.com under my name, James Lawler. And I also have an author's website that you're welcome to look at.
Interesting. I'll be adding the book links of James below the description section. So if anyone would like to purchase these books from James, you can just click on the link and make the purchase. If you'd like to speak with James or try to interview him, I'll be adding his website and the contact details as well. So yeah, thank you very much again, James, for these insights, and have a good day. It was great speaking with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amkar. It was a pleasure.